Researchers want your help. Hundreds of volunteers are needed for one of the first U.S. human trials testing a promising new vaccine.
And Lucas came home and he goes, "Mom, Dad, my friend is volunteering for the Pfizer vaccine trial, and I want to do it too." So there was monetary compensation. It was $119 each visit, which is a lot for a kid. So then all three kids wanted to be part of the trial. This was their ticket to freedom, not wearing masks. You don't need to be quarantined, you can't get COVID, plus they can make some money while doing it. I was not worried at all. My kids have never had a problem with any vaccine. January 21st, 2021, came into our room around 4 a.m. and said she didn't feel right and asked if she could sleep with us. Not typical of her. The next day, she wanted to go to school and we said, okay, that's fine. Well, she barely made it through the day. When she walked in the door from the bus, she was not in good shape. My husband was here. He had sent me a text at work and he said, Maddie's having some sort of reaction to the vaccine. So I called him, and in the background, I hear her saying, screaming like in agony. "Mom, Mom, Mom, my heart hurts so bad. It feels like it's being ripped out through my neck." Like I can't get that out of my head. They went to the ER, so they wanted her to be checked for appendicitis because that's what they were focused on, is the lower abdominal pain, nothing else. They did a renal profile and an ultrasound of her abdomen, and they couldn't find her appendix, but didn't see any signs that it burst. So they sent her home and said, this is most likely a reaction to the vaccine, and it'll get better over time. Go see your family doctor if you have any more issues. January 23rd, 2021. Continued symptoms. Severe body pain, especially back. Can't touch or lay on it. And walking hunched over. Neck pain, severe stomach pain. New symptoms, nauseous and diarrhea. Extreme fatigue. Referred to GP. She went to the ER 3 times in that first week, and on the 3rd time, they finally admitted her. Instead of sending in different medical specialists and doing any testing, they sent in psychologists, social workers. That's what they were focused on, was her mental health. They didn't do an MRI, they didn't do an EMG, they didn't do an EKG. They were trying to imply that she had anxiety, and that's what was causing everything, that she was anxious about the vaccine. I give them printouts of all these links with documents that are peer-reviewed medical documents saying that these things happened with the vaccine to people. They just say thank you. February 16th, 2021. Symptoms are getting worse, along with new symptoms. So we took her to the ER. Her stomach is very bloated after eating. She almost looks pregnant. Dizzy and nauseous. Pain all over. Says her heart is on fire. She can't give herself showers at all anymore. So every time she'd eat, she'd throw up. Her stomach was excruciating pain, and it got to the point where she couldn't eat at all. And we were so desperate, we were trying to feed her sugar and get any type of liquids in her. And we kept calling and messaging the doctors saying we're really worried, there's something wrong. And they just kept ignoring us. After her first hospital visit, she was referred to an allergist and immunologist at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and that was Dr. Amal Assad. She spent 15 minutes with her and basically said that it wasn't from the vaccine and that it was functional neurologic disorder. Functional neurologic disorder is your brain's not sending signals correctly. You can blame everything on it. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be something where you can't walk. It's a software problem, not a hardware problem, is what they say. She's an allergist and immunologist, not a neurologist.
I got involved in food allergy about 40 years ago.
Why is she diagnosing her with functional neurologic disorder? And in her notes, it said that she talked to Dr. Frank ahead of time. For the Pfizer trial, they have a principal investigator, and what they're responsible for is being the advocate for the people in the trial, making sure that they're safe, and also determining if something does happen, if it was due to the vaccine or not. And this principal investigator works for Cincinnati Children's Hospital, not for Pfizer, and his name was Robert Frank. February 19th, 2021. She fainted and blacked out and hit her head. Couldn't remember anything from the day before. Her birthday, friends' names, they gave her different tape for the IV. Thinks she may have had a rubber allergy, is what they told us. During her second hospital stay, after she woke up from the MRI of her brain and the upper GI, when she went to stand up, she fell right to the ground. She's not been able to walk by herself since then.
This is the allergist, and this is what she wrote. These are different excerpts from after her, 15-minute, I believe it was, assessment. My assessment is that Madeline has a functional impairment that is not organic in nature. I strongly suggest a care conference with the family to explain our assessment and to include other specialists who may have seen her. I also, look at this, folks, I also discourage further workup, since this is usually detrimental in functional disorders, because it drives the patient to think that there must be something wrong that is indicating all this workup. It also delays the necessary psychologic intervention that is needed to help resolve the functional disorder. When I read that, I can't tell you how infuriating it must be as a parent. Your child is having blackouts. She's vomiting. She's screaming in pain with her stomach. Her heart feels like it's being ripped out of her neck, and ultimately ends up where she cannot stand or walk. And this person, and we have some knowledge in this, this person, as you pointed out, you brought in transverse myelitis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, these issues that are all listed as side effects in other vaccines. In other vaccines, they exist. These are known side effects that can describe exactly what you're seeing in Maddie. And this woman just said, don't diagnose any of those things. Don't do any more investigations to see if this vaccine is paralyzing her as we speak. We're going to treat this as a psychological disorder. Meaning, and I want to ask you this because we know when we reference that there is work to be done, there are drugs to be taken if you are having Guillain-Barré syndrome or a transverse myelitis reaction that could stop that paralysis, that could stop that from taking place. When you look at this, this woman got in the way of a proper diagnosis and the drugs that maybe could have kept Maddie from being paralyzed. Is that something that runs through your mind as you look at this?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think she was working alone. I mean, as you've seen, on some of the notes that they collaborate. Okay. And when I was the one that took her to the allergist, and you would think, okay, we're going to do a skin prick test where they're going to, do certain chemicals to see if you have a reaction, wait, do a timer. Only thing she did after she kept us waiting in there with the nurse, she comes in, gives a quick talk for about 10 minutes, listens to her heart, listens to her lungs. All right, thank you. Have a great day. And I'm like, why did we even come here?
I want you to imagine that suddenly the people that were supposed to be protecting your child and making this safe for them start looking at her like she's crazy. And maybe you're crazy. You're not going to believe this.
March 24th, 2021. One of her blackouts today lasted 20 minutes, and when she came to, her pulse went up to 150.
Hey, Maddie. Honey. Hey.
March 28th, 2021. She had about 10 convulsions and seizures today. She cannot walk. She gets around by scooting on her butt still. There are medical records from doctors at Cincinnati Children's that say during her ER visits that she has no anxiety, no signs of it. She had no diagnosis about anxiety before this. It's like they planned it out. So they put anxiety in there and then said, oh, she has anxiety. She has functional neurologic disorder. That's what's causing her problems. About 2.5 months after the shot was her third hospital visit, and they told her she'd be there for 2 weeks and that they would have her walking by the time she left in 2 weeks. She was there for a month and a half. While Maddie was in the program, she did not get better after 2 weeks. She had minimal progress with walking and zero with the swallowing. There was no progress. It was during this time that we had a conversation with Dr. Robert Frank. Dr. Frank had absolutely no idea that Maddie was in the very hospital that he works in. Meanwhile, we're having a conversation with him about how we're being expected to pay these hospital bills. That we were told any medical bills incurred because of the trial would be paid for if we went to Cincinnati Children's Hospital.
I talked with our family relations people about the bills that you had sent for the hospital, and that they said that they would be happy to work with you about the concerns you're having about the bills.
I'm kind of confused because when all this started, the conversations back and forth with Kristen, it was just submit them, we'll review them, and we'll reimburse you, then you pay them. So it sounds like you're going on a different path here.
I apologize if that was what you had heard, because that really wouldn't be the approach. As far as would be if they were deemed to be research related.
Which it's pretty obviously they are research related, but so are you saying that your conclusion is that they're not?
The doctors that have seen her so far have not found something where they thought was research related, is what they all were telling me.
We requested the official medical records, which are different than the My Chart. A lot more detail in there. And there was a lot of notes by doctors in the ER and while she was admitted in, nurses, where they said that they talked to him. And from the way you read it, he was saying what tests should and shouldn't be done. He says in there, in one of the comments, it says that he says there have been no reactions like Maddie from the vaccine, basically saying this isn't the vaccine because of this. It was a clinical trial. How can you say that? That's the whole point of it. And this is very early on. You could tell that he was calling the shots.
One of the first ones says related to the vaccine trial. So and it happens within 24-hour period. All this went down. So, I mean, if that's your stand, I find it hard to believe that you're trying to steer away from that.
So that's why we were having many physicians see Maddie and many people working with Maddie to come up with a idea of what was going on.
So that's not a true statement either, because we're the ones that had to push to get even to where we're at, because there was no centralized care. We've been updating you on the progress of all of our kids, and then you kind of guys left us hanging.
You know what they had us do? Fill out paperwork for long-term care through Medicaid. So first, I mean, there was a lot of paper, like basically they just passed us off to pay for that. But then there were a bunch of hospital bills that were not paid for because of you can't get approved for that until you're in the hospital for over a month, which she was.
So we wanted to obviously chat with you guys and update you because Maddie unfortunately didn't meet the walking goal or the physical therapy goal that was set for today.
They didn't treat her well. They treated her like she was crazy, that she has functional neurologic disorder and the family needs to be educated on it, and that we need to get her psychological help.
My concerns are with her being in an eating disorder program with a bunch of people that are anorexic and bulimic, when that is not her problem.
So at one point, without us agreeing to it, they put her on like a behavior plan, where if she didn't meet certain goals, she couldn't socialize with anybody. Like, where if she didn't, like if she wasn't able to like stand, then she's punished.
Now, Maddie, come.
Squeeze your butt, Let's go.
If she doesn't meet her goal, then that's kind of an indication that this inpatient rehab program is not, or has kind of reached sort of the max potential in terms of improving her mobility and function, and so transitioning to a different phase of care is the next step.
Because Maddie was making zero progress at all with the swallowing and eating, they didn't know what to do with her. So their best solution was sending her to a psych ward. When we got there, everything that they told us was a lie. Like about how they do their approach with it. They're like, well, she's gonna have to eat or she will have consequences. And that they were gonna change her formula, and that they were also gonna make her squat down to make sure she didn't hide anything in her crotch. I'm like, she can't even stand. How is she freaking gonna do that? I'm like, and she just came from the hospital. How could she have any, like, are you kidding me? So we took her home that night. We didn't have any supplies. At that point, I didn't know what we were gonna do. It was a nightmare. I don't even know how she's sane. I don't feel like I am anymore.
But I also would blame the system because they're being told, hey,
They're afraid.
toe the line. This
They're
is how
afraid.
it's going to be. Well, I don't want to hear anything negative about COVID vaccine. Or I'm sure, like, doctors were even scared to see her because, you know, they're going to get attacked. They're going to, you know, worry about their license, their credentials,
I mean,
their
licenses
livelihood.
were taken away. I mean, there's notes that you see in her records where you could clearly see that somebody knew something was wrong, and they put it in there because they knew it. I think it just helped their conscience, to be honest with you, but they knew they couldn't do anything about it. I really, not everybody. Like some of these people, like Dr. Frank is pure evil.
It's been a year and a half. For those of you wondering where Maddie is at now, after having been through this ordeal.
I am not feeling the best today, honestly. My stomach's been upset and I just haven't been feeling well. I'm just always sore. My body always hurts though, so. Obviously I can't walk, can't eat, can't do most things kids can do. Can't shower by myself. I like a lot of pain always.
So it's been almost a year and a half since she got her first dose. And today, she is in a wheelchair. She can't feel from her waist down. She cannot walk. She can't stand. She cannot feel the urge to pee. Like it gets to the point where it's overfull. She can't see. She has font this big on her phone. She has tinnitus. She still gets sick to her stomach even from being fed with an NG tube. She still can't swallow. Pfizer, FDA, nobody's ever contacted us. Never, not once. Not for an inquiry, not for a, hey, I'm sorry. They've not paid for anything. They've done nothing. They've just basically pretended this didn't happen. I feel like I failed her. You're supposed to protect your kids, and I thought I was protecting her with the vaccine. I thought in a clinical trial that if anything happened, they were going to do everything they could to figure it out. I thought that was the whole point. So that's why I wasn't worried. But they didn't do that. They just tried to make her look like she was crazy.
And for people that are wondering, you know, how does this turn out in the Pfizer trial? This is how it's referenced right here. Essentially, one participant experienced a severe adverse event reported as generalized neuralgia and also reported 3 concurrent non-serious AEs, abdominal pain, abscess, and gastritis, and 1 concurrent severe adverse event, constipation, within the same week. The participant was eventually diagnosed with functional abdominal pain. The event was reported ongoing at the time of the cutoff date. That is how the Pfizer told the FDA the story. That looks like fraud to me.
Hold on, let's back up. When was that released?
April
Yep.
9th, right when she was admitted.
And they made sure that diagnosis was in her paperwork.
Right before it,
Yep.
the day before.
Wow.
Because it was adverse reaction, and then all of a sudden now it's a functional. So now they can say, hey, our trial is great. I don't know what you're talking about.
They barely did any tests before making that.
So
diagnosis.
they didn't do the proper tests. They never give her, did she ever get a diagnosis from the Children's Hospital beyond this, psychological, neurological disorder? Did you ever get a diagnosis of transverse myelitis or Guillain-Barré syndrome?
No, they never did the test that could show that.
I understand we have a diagnosis now from doctors that are
Yes.
not a part of the trial and are not biased. What have you found out?
So we had transferred all of our care from Cincinnati Children's into Dayton Children's, which is a local hospital, and they're not very well equipped. Also, what we found is like all these hospitals, children's hospitals at least, through my chart, they're all connected. So before we even walked in the door, they had already made, there was bias. They already had made a diagnosis without even meeting her or doing any tests. So she ended up having one other further complication with her formula, the Elacare Junior, which was part of that recall with Simlac. And
so there's literally, let me understand. So you're saying it's almost like there's a long arm. You can't get away from this darkness. This trial is getting in the way of you getting any help wherever you go. Which is why I want to thank you for being so brave. So we're going to keep the doctor anonymous. You do have a doctor that has finally done the proper tests. I want to show this to folks. Yeah, and we've got it. I think we have the diagnosis here. This is what the discovery was. The findings were consistent with severe distal chronic acquired demyelinating, I don't even know how to say this word, polyradiculoneuropathy, small fiber sensory neuropathy, orthostatic intolerance in the setting of COVID vaccination. I know what demyelinating means, and it is one of the issues we've seen with vaccines throughout history. It's those things that lead to things like transverse myelitis, multiple sclerosis, all of these types of issues that really need to be addressed early. There's been a lot of time lost here. What is the frustration now that you have a diagnosis? And by the way, to think all of the rest of what they were doing was just a cover up and a lie, all that time wasted.
I mean, like getting mad isn't going to help anything. It's trying to help other people. Like what we've been trying to do, beyond getting her help, is make sure that no other people make the mistakes that we did, like putting her on like toxic drugs like gabapentin and Lyrica that made her worse, or using the MRI contrast. Like it's, once your body is, once this is happening from the vaccine, it's like everything makes it worse. So, and it's not letting them know, don't waste your time on the doctors that you normally would go to.